If you're looking to fix your posture or your patient's postures, a lot of times we go to YouTube and in the search box, we type in how to fix posture. From there, we see hundreds and hundreds of videos that share one common problem: the belief of good posture. You see, inside the videos, you get so many stretching based exercises to stretch tight muscles. The reason for that is because the belief is that good posture is upright military posture. Well, in this video, I want to start to redefine that a little bit because I think it's a little obsolete. To me, good posture is the one that you can move in and out of. When you are stuck in a posture and it becomes a pattern, that is bad posture. For example, being stuck here and living here and having little to no movement variability is just as bad as the person that's here. So in this video, I want to talk about how you can truly change your posture and change your belief about posture so that you can start moving better, feeling better, getting out of pain, and give your patients better postural exercises. The first step in our postural journey is understanding the starting position. It's really hard to know where we're going if we don't actually know where we started from. So instead of thinking upright military posture, I want you to recognize that every single person is going to be biased towards a different center of mass. Center of mass is the key variable here that is always neglected when it comes to properly prescribing exercises and changing someone's posture. In a second, I'm going to show you on the whiteboard a number scale so you can visualize it. But here are the two different center of mass biases that you'll see. The first is an anterior center of mass bias. Think of this as the big butt syndromes. What do you do if you want to make your butt look bigger? You go into an anterior pelvic tilt, drive extension through the spine, bring the rib cage flared, and live in extension. These types of people are pushing their center of mass forward, and it's going to produce a certain type of posture. Conversely, we have the no butt syndromes. These are the people that have an illusion because they're in a posterior pelvic tilt. The butt goes under the pelvis, they live in more flexion, the rib cage is down, they're more rounded. These types of people are going to be biased towards certain postures. So if we are looking to change someone's posture long term, not in a very short session, but long term, we need to start giving them what they don't have. For example, our anterior center of mass patients, they live here. We need to get them down. Our posterior center of mass live here. We need to get them up. You see, that's why it's really hard to give every single person the same postural exercise, because we need to first understand their starting point. And I think in the postural world and changing postures and rehab and in the gym, that is really neglected. So let's jump into the whiteboard and walk through each example so you can visualize how we can change and get someone out of this pattern. So we have a number scale behind us. We have the posterior center of mass on one side, the anterior center of mass on the other. Now, before we get into each, I want to walk through the overall goal. The overall goal can be summed up in two hot buzzwords in the physical therapy world. Those are movement variability. This means that if you are working with a patient, they can move from an anterior center of mass and a posterior center of mass. All this means is that they can move back and forth through their postural number scale and not have pain. So someone that is moving pain-free and can perform well, they're moving in and out of variable postures, life is good. However, if you're working with someone or if you're having problems, there's something going on, right? I want to drive home the point of patterns. So I'm going to go with a red color for our posterior center of mass population. Let's say that we have someone that has a movement variability of that. This is their movement capacity. Just based off what we talk about, Can't you already start to see why this person's going to have pain? This person is going to go over here. But how are they going to do it? These are where all the compensations, all the problems, all the reasons they're in front of you come in. This is their clean motion. This is what they own, but because they're stuck in a pattern and they can't get out of it, they compensate to go the other way. Now, let's use purple for our anterior. Let's say that this person has a movement capacity of this much. Now, just off the red and the purple, who do you think is going to be in more pain? The person that has less movement capacity, our posterior center of mass patient. This anterior has more movement available, so as they go this way, I'll put it down here, they are doing so with less compensations. Less compensation because they have more movement available to them. These patterns produce different postures. Now that we understand this, we can actually start to prescribe and coach specific exercises. This person is going to need different exercises and different breathing strategies compared to this person. So if you are trying to change posture, if you are coaching someone in exercises to change their posture, if we are neglecting the center of mass and breathing, it's going to be really hard to get long-term results. Stretching the pecs and opening things up and going to extension feels good in the moment, but rarely gives long-term results. So now you understand that, but you might be asking yourself, how do I know what center of mass my patient or client is biased towards? Well, definitely check out the Clinical Coaching Foundations, where I teach an entire system that goes into this in so much detail. But for this video's purpose, we can use lower extremity assessment tests to understand. Why? Because when we are in certain positions and putting the structure in certain position, it is going to create certain expectations. For example, someone with a posterior bias is usually going to have increased hip flexion and increased hip external rotation measures. Conversely, those in an anterior bias typically have higher amounts of hip internal rotation and a straight leg raise. So as you're going through your lower extremity assessments, if you are a physical therapist or a strength coach, keep in mind these tests to see and start to understand, does it reflect my patient's or client's center of mass? Do you know those really boring pelvis exercises that all physical therapists start with? Well, they actually are crazy powerful when we are looking at it the right way. Now that we've gotten away from this military posture, we're understanding center of mass issues, we now need to coach our patient how to properly stack the rib cage above the pelvis. In an anterior center of mass, they live here. In a posterior center of mass, they live here. So we need to find more of a neutral point, and then we need to learn how to breathe there. Think about it. This person is in a pattern that they are driving dysfunctional breathing 23,000 plus times per day. This starts to build the pattern, build a pattern. This is why it's difficult to change posture. So we need to build a strong foundation before we actually go to a first and second floor. So from an anterior center of mass dysfunction, we need to get them to roll the pelvis into more of a posterior direction. We need to get the rib cage to come down. And as we're going through breathing, we need to get them to focus on expanding the upper chest and really feeling the rib cage coming down. They live in so much extension with a flared rib cage. They have to get the rib cage moving and have to start to bring it down. Now for our posterior center of mass, they actually live in more of a posterior, so we might need to drive a slight amount of an anterior pelvic tilt. We might not want to be in a hook lying position. We might want to be straight to drive more extension. And when we drive breathing, we need to get them to get the rib cage to be able to expand laterally and get the pump handle, the upper chest, to start to compress. Because of their normal breathing patterns, they usually have the opposite.
So the key takeaway here is we need to get the pelvis and the rib cage stacked. We need to get them moving. We need to increase the patient's awareness of the two, and then we need to drive proper breathing mechanics in the proper position.
So let's do a quick recap before we talk about exercises. We're moving away from this thought that this is the best posture. Sure, we want to be here throughout the day, but we need to be able to move in and out of variable postures all day long. The body loves movement, and this is how we stay pain-free. Once we understood that, then we discussed center of mass issues, right? We have an anterior and posterior, and they're going to produce certain postures and certain movement biases. Next, we talked about stacking the rib cage and pelvis, putting them in a good position and learning how to breathe in that position. And now, how do we properly give exercises to someone that has an anterior or posterior? We could do hours worth of exercises, but I don't think that's the biggest bang for your buck. To me, the biggest bang for your buck is understanding the principles. Because I'm not with you, I don't know exactly what your posture or your patient's postures and their background. So I think the more important thing when it comes to choosing the correct exercise is the setup. And to drive this point home, I just want to talk about a squat. Now, is a squat going to be best for everyone? Probably not, but it can be done in a very optimal and efficient way when you are very intentional with the setup. For example, if we are working with someone that lives in this posterior center of mass, we can get strategic, and if we're going to do a squat, go into a barbell back squat. Now, for me to say that's pretty hard because I don't think a barbell back squat is the best exercise. I think so many people have grown up with it and everyone does it, and I don't think it really drives the best trajectory and mechanics. However, when it's done intentionally, I think it can be pretty powerful. Now think about it. Why? If somebody lives here, what does a barbell back squat do? It's going to start to first pull them into extension. This is moving them away from their number scale and moving them and increasing that movement capacity. Besides the extension, it's starting to give length to the glutes. Why? Because we start to go into an anterior pelvic tilt. These people live here with concentric glutes that really don't like to move. Now, just by putting a barbell on our back, we can go down and squat like this. We could do good mornings, right? So the exercise doesn't matter. It's the principle. The person has concentric glutes. They have the rib cage down. They don't know how to breathe here. We pull them in with specific exercises. Now, let's compare that to our anterior center of mass. Now, just based off what I said, do you think a barbell back squat would be best for this population to change their posture and to get them out of pain? Probably not. It's just feeding their mechanics. It's getting them stronger, and what it's going to do, because the stronger we get, the more we compress, it's going to decrease their movement capacity. So that anterior center of mass that we talked about on the whiteboard, that capacity of movement becomes smaller and smaller. They live in more of a pattern. They have more dysfunction. So sticking on the squat thought, an anterior load, a goblet squat, a front squat, something with an anterior load is going to produce a slight amount of a posterior pelvic tilt. That's giving more concentric bias to the glutes. It's going to work to get the rib cage down, and it's going to get them to move very vertical. They like to live here. They like to hinge. So we're changing their trajectory of movement. We're changing the type of contraction on their dysfunctional muscles, aka glutes eccentric, front squat, glutes concentric. So that is getting strategic with exercise, and that is how you start to change a posture. Now, is it going to happen in one session? Absolutely not. Is it going to happen in two? Absolutely not. But people work out for a long time. When you're strategic with the exercises, you are continuously, day in and day out, starting to improve that capacity of movement they have based off the exercises and the setup that you chose. So that's the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to changing posture with exercises. We need to think of all the variables before that, and then we need to really get strategic on the exercise setup.